For years, I felt completely powerless with my type 1 diabetes. Like, no matter what I did, my blood sugar just did whatever the heck it wanted to. I'd be high one day, I'd be low the next, but I'd get completely different results. If you've lived with type 1 diabetes, you've probably felt that way too. Like, you're doing everything right, and it still makes absolutely no sense. In this video, I want to show you the biggest lie about type 1 diabetes and the shift in thinking that helped me stop feeling powerless and start seeing patterns in my blood sugars. I've been living with type 1 diabetes for almost 44 years. I've also raised 2 kids with type 1. Somewhere along the way I thought about diabetes started to change because there's a lie about type 1 diabetes that a lot of people believe. And the scary part is a lot of people living with type 1 believe it too. But here's the problem. When you start believing that diabetes is completely random, you also start believing that nothing you do really matters. And that's a dangerous place to end up. Because if your actions don't matter, why bother trying? And I'll be honest, there were many times in my life where I felt pretty close to that. I felt like diabetes was just something happening to me, something I was constantly reacting to. The interesting thing is, this shift in my thinking actually came up pretty recently. I was in a therapy session just this past month, and we were talking about life, my sobriety journey, and some of the things that helped me stay successful with this. And the conversation turned to something called self-efficacy, which is really just the belief that your actions can influence the outcome. And as we were talking about that, something clicked for me because I realized that belief guided how I've managed my diabetes for most of my life. That belief, internal belief that I could actually influence where my diabetes ends up. Not perfectly, but consistently over the years. And the more I thought about that, the more something became clear to me. Maybe diabetes wasn't actually random. Maybe I just hadn't figured out the patterns yet. But I'm curious about something. Have you started noticing patterns in your own diabetes? If so, drop me a comment and let me know. All right, back to the story. Now, that doesn't mean diabetes is simple. That's not what I'm saying. My gosh, far from it. Because one of the most frustrating things about diabetes is that so many moving pieces involved. Honestly, probably hundreds. But here are some of the big ones. Food, carb counting, stress, and how that impacts blood sugars. Sleep, exercise, hormones, stuff we don't even see. All those things can mess with your blood sugar and diabetes control. Sometimes even the order you eat something can change what happens. So when we as diabetics are trying to manage all of that at the same time, it starts to feel completely chaotic and random, like nothing makes sense. But over the years, I started noticing something different. When I slowed down and really paid attention, patterns started showing up. Certain foods acted a certain way. Certain types of exercise, like aerobic, like running or jogging, weightlifting, Thai boxing, affected my blood sugar completely differently. Even when I had a poor night's sleep or stress, it could push things in a different direction. Not perfectly, but often enough that it stopped feeling like pure chaos. Things started to make a bit of sense. And that's when something finally clicked for me. Maybe diabetes wasn't actually random. Maybe I just hadn't figured out all the patterns yet. And I actually remember when this belief or thought that I could influence the outcome of my diabetes really clicked. I remember it like it was yesterday. I was in nursing school doing a placement in the diabetes clinic and reviewing an article that the instructor gave me called the DCCT trial. It was one of the biggest studies ever done on type 1 diabetes at the time. And they actually stopped the study short and early because the results were so promising. And what they found was incredible. People who kept tighter control of their blood sugars dramatically reduced the risk of complications. This is common knowledge now. Back then, in the 90s, it was like profound to read this. I thought I was going to die young and end up with complications no matter what. But it said basically reduce your complications of blindness, kidney failure, nerve damage. And I remember thinking to myself after reading it, I don't have to go blind. I don't have to end up on dialysis. I don't have to end up losing a limb like my grandfather did. That was a huge moment for me because it confirmed something I'd already started to believe, that the day-to-day choices we make with diabetes actually matter and you can actually influence the outcome. And that's when I started realizing something else. The biggest lie about type 1 diabetes isn't that it's hard, because it is hard. It's a grind. The biggest lie is that Nothing you do really matters. That's a lie. And let's admit it. Some of us out there dealing with this, myself included at times, feel like your blood sugar is just random and that you're basically powerless. Now, diabetes will never be perfectly predictable. You and I both know that. But that doesn't mean our actions don't influence the outcome. They absolutely do. What you eat, how you time your insulin, how you handle stress, how you respond when things go off track in life and in diabetes. None of those things give you perfect control, but they do give you influence. And over time, that influence, that belief that you can change the outcome, it adds up. And that's the difference between feeling like diabetes is happening to you and realizing it's something you can actually work with, and not perfectly, but meaningfully. And honestly, that shift in how I think about diabetes way back then changed how I've lived with it and where I am today. I 100% believe that. It didn't make it easier any step of the way, and it definitely didn't make it more predictable, but it did change how I looked at it. Instead of feeling like diabetes was just happening to me, I started seeing it as something I could actually work with. And that shift from powerless to believing our actions influence the outcome made a huge difference over time. Now, if this video resonated with you in any way, hit that like button. That kind of feedback really does help the channel, and it helps me keep making more videos like this. And if you've ever had days where your blood sugar makes absolutely no sense, even when you feel like you're doing everything in your power to do it right, you want to watch this next.